Hey gang, hope you are all good. I am just dropping in with your intuitive eating webinar. So, getting straight into it, we're going to cover what is intuitive eating, how the hell do I do it, and how and when do I make the decision to start intuitive eating, essentially. So, intuitive eating is essentially just being a normal human being, not tracking food, and just essentially what you're going to end up doing for the rest of your life. It's the ultimate end goal for you to have, that ultimate degree of food freedom and just live a normal life. But obviously, the problem is that it's not something that people can, jump into straight away. And the thing is, as I've mentioned here, intuitive eating has probably already been a part of your life at some point. You're literally listening to this right now because you've hired a coach, because, technically you've been intuitively or had been intuitively eating up until a point before starting this program, and, maybe not been feeling so great about it. It probably hasn't been a productive experience for you so far. That's literally why you've hired me as your coach. And it's absolutely not your fault. I don't think anyone is really, unless you've got mega parents that are well clued up in terms of their relationship with food and have a real life perspective on food. Most people can't successfully intuitive eat. Why is that such a hard word? Unfortunately in the UK we've not been blessed with an abundance of proper and realistic nutrition education at a primary and secondary school level. This is one of my biggest bugbears. I don't think it's the sole reason, but I think it's a massive contributing factor for, individuals not ending up where they want to be in terms of their physique, their self-esteem, their attitude towards themselves, and ultimately their relationship with food, because we're not taught about it at school. No one teaches us how to have a good relationship with food. No one teaches us the importance of nutrition and the nutrition basics. That sort of education comes from our parents, and, quite frankly, all of our boomer parents have got horrendous relationships with food because, they grew up in that Atkins diet era. So, we've pretty much all inherited their terrible relationship with food. So it's not, intuitive eating is kind of something, on the most part, we should have grown up and been able to do it successfully, but we haven't, that's just not the case in this country. In some countries it is, but, we've just not grown up with proper nutrition knowledge, and therefore, as a, nation, we've really struggled to kind of eat intuitively successfully. Essentially, as I've kind of touched upon, for it to be successful, it is a case of learning about nutrition basics, and then obviously learning a lot about yourself as well, and unlearning and reprogramming a lot of your sort of previously held beliefs about eating, yourself, your health, your emotions, how you view food, that kind of thing. So it's a big sort of reset, basically, a big learn and a big reset. So how do you do it? So before you can successfully intuitively, you need to have these skills nailed. You can't just go into it, as I've said. You need to be able to differentiate between emotional and actual hunger. So you need to be able to understand your hunger cues, be able to eat when you're hungry, and make proper meals and then stop when you're satisfied. And then for those times when you do have those emotional hunger pangs, you are able to give yourself what you really need in terms of emotional support. So that's a mega thing. If you are an emotional eater, jumping straight into intuitive eating is not going to be successful for you, because you probably can't differentiate between emotional and actual hunger, and you don't know how to manage those periods when you do have emotional hunger. And I would honestly say, I think one of the biggest deciding factors in being able to intuitively eat successfully is actually prioritizing your mental health, because we know what an impact, mental health has on our relationship with food and our attitude towards food, whether that's, not eating at all or eating too much. So I would genuinely say, to have a successful, a bit an ability to intuitively eat successfully, your mental health, I'm not saying it has to be perfect because no one's is, but it has to be in a good place, right? So yeah, the other thing is being able to eat mindfully. Now, this is a really big buzzword, and I think like it's something that people just like to throw around because it's a big buzzword, but essentially it means paying attention to our food on purpose, you know, be in the moment whilst you're eating. So like this could be as little as not looking at TikTok when you're eating your dinner, or like actually sitting down and having a family meal and like sitting and appreciating the food, and being able to do that like without judgment, in terms of like, you know, not looking at a plate of food being like, oh my God, this is so many calories, or oh my God, what I'm eating is really bad, or oh my God, like, you know, I feel like I'm like an angel because I'm just eating salad. Like, you need to be able to eat mindfully and without judgment. Something I've kind of touched upon already is having a basic knowledge of nutrition, i.e., you know, one of the main things that pretty much all of you have learned from starting online coaching is that you probably weren't eating enough protein, right? So, you know, we know what an impact. You remember in that first week when you started following your meal plan and you couldn't finish all of your food because you were so full, and it was because of that jump up between, you know, actually eating enough protein, eating high volume foods, and eating enough veg. So that having that sort of basic knowledge of nutrition, like eating enough protein, enough veggies, obviously understanding what calorie balances are, you know, maintenance calories, calorie deficits, calorie surpluses, understanding the value of food, you know, being able to look at like oil, for example, and be like, okay, I know that that is a low volume calorie dense food. So when I have that as a portion, I know it needs to be smaller than my potato portion because, you know, potato is a high volume, not so calorie dense food. So it's being able to understand the nutritional value of individual items. And again, doing it without judgment, i.e. not looking at oil and being like, that's empty calories. It's looking at oil and being like, okay, I know that's fats. I know it's, you know, it doesn't even have to be as deep as I know it's monounsaturated fat and it's heart healthy fat. It's just, I know that that's a fat source, and I know that's going to be more calorie dense than my carb and my protein sources. Or being able to look at a piece of salmon, for instance, and say, look, I know that that's a protein source, and I know that it's also a high fat protein source, you know, compared to a piece of chicken, which is just, you know, pure protein and no fat. So it's having that understanding of like nutrition and the value of nutrition, and again, being able to do that without judgment. You know, it basically just being able to properly fuel yourself, you know, each day, and not sort of, as I'm going to kind of touch upon, not having that kind of like diet mentality, i.e. like one of the big sort of struggles really is going from dieting to intuitive eating, because in your head you're still in that sort of I need to eat as little calories as possible, whereas with intuitive eating you want to be focusing on I'm fueling my body for day-to-day life, and I need to find that balance between fueling it enough, not over fueling it so I'm in a calorie surplus consistently, and not under fueling it so I'm consistently in a calorie deficit. You want to find that sort of middle ground essentially. Another major player is having a healthy relationship with exercise. So exercising regularly in whatever form or way you want to, and whatever form or way you enjoy, and having sufficient rest, not feeling like you need to counteract, you know, certain meals, or having a day where you have had additional calories with exercise, and not over exercising, but, you know, also I would probably say not under exercising, because remember your fuel needs change with how much output you have. So, but yeah, you know, not having that sort of I need to exercise to burn calories, or I need to exercise to earn this food. It's having that sort of like I enjoy exercise and I'm doing it because it's good for me. And the last couple of things is about like a balanced diet. So you need to understand what a balanced diet looks like for you individually and not for anyone else. So for instance, you know, a balanced diet to me is having 3 square meals and 2 desserts. Like I have to have a lunch dessert and then I have a dinner dessert. Like that's a balanced diet for me. You know, maybe with like 1 meal out a week. Like that's a balanced diet for me. But it might look slightly different for some people, i.e., you know, you might not feel the need to have a lunchtime dessert. Or you know, in order to kind of stay on top of having, like, stay on top of your cravings and stuff, you may need to have slightly more sweet food, but obviously understanding that, it's not encroaching too much on, the nutritional goodness that you also need to get. So yeah, it's understanding what a balanced diet looks like for you and making sure that it's not swinging too much either way in terms of, like, very without, like, I use these terms in inverted commas, having a really, like, good clean diet and having a really bad diet in terms of, like, the nutritional value that you're getting from the foods that you're picking. And as I touched upon, you don't want to have, like, a dieting or restrictive mentality. So this takes a lot of practice. Like, you kind of have to get out of that mindset of I need to eat as little as possible, and kind of, like, focus more on, like, the fuel that you're getting from your food, as well as obviously the enjoyment, rather than I'm eating this meal because I know it's keeping me in a calorie deficit. It's I'm eating this meal because I know that it's going to fill me up, feel good, and I'm going to be performing at my optimal level, essentially. And, obviously it goes without saying, you don't want to be in a position where you label foods or feel guilt or punish yourself, for certain food-related behaviours. But at the same time, you can call yourself out on your bullshit. Like, if you've been a dickhead that week and, like, all of your meals have just been snacks, you probably had more, chocolate or calorie-dense, non-nutritious items than you needed. And you probably haven't eaten mindfully, and, you can call yourself out on that. You can recognise your behaviours and say, actually, I need to put a stop to that. If your standards have slipped, but you have no problems also enjoying all types of food. And I think ultimately, like, have a drive to have a balanced diet because you enjoy it and you enjoy how it makes you feel. And it's doing, it's doing you some good, but you don't just do it because, I need to eat more veg because it's good for me. Like, like, the meals that you eat, you enjoy, and they're balanced, and it's an enjoyable part of your life. Like, eating is an enjoyable part of your life. You're not just doing it as a chore. Okay, so how and when do I progress on to intuitive eating? So essentially, like, and this is the approach that I take with, like, clients when they're finishing, when you've reached your happy place, like, when you're happy with your physique, when you're happy with your relationship with food, when you're happy with the balance that you have in your life when it comes to training and your mental health and your self-care, and you just generally feel like in a happy, confident place that, you feel like you can approach food with that same degree of positivity, as you're feeling towards the other aspects of your life. So, when for instance, like, when you want to finish losing weight, like, when you've, reached your, whatever your goal is, or you actually are sick of dieting and you just want to focus on, being a happy, healthy version of yourself, and, having good, positive, a positive, like, mindset towards yourself. When you've finished trying to change your body, that's when you want to progress on to intuitive eating, when you are ready to live like a normal human being. Because, being in a bulk, being in a calorie deficit, like, that's not normal life. Like, that is meant to be a short period of your life, and once you finish doing that, that's when you then continue to live your life, without that calorie balance. Like, essentially, intuitive eating is going to be an extension of what you do in a calorie deficit. It's just that you're eating more calories because you're going to be at your maintenance calories rather than being in a calorie deficit. That's the difference. It's the change in energy balance. So yeah, I would generally say, like, it is possible to intuitive eat and lose weight. Like, if you don't want to track and you don't want to follow a meal plan, you can intuitively eat and lose weight. But I genuinely think it only really sees, like, major success after having many years of intuitive eating. So, like, for example, now, like, I am, starting to put myself back into a calorie deficit. I'm not tracking. And I know, like, in my mind, like, I just need to make what tweaks I can make in order to continue to eat intuitively, but, like, reduce the amount of calories that I'm eating. For example, like, I don't cook with oil now. I just use the Fry Light spray, or rather than having 80 grams of pasta, I'm having 60 grams of pasta. So, like, I would generally say, ultimately, when it comes to losing weight, like, the most important part is knowing that you're in a calorie deficit, and you don't always know that when you're intuitive eating. So I would generally say like a meal plan or tracking your food is still the best option when you're trying to lose weight. Unless you genuinely are like, I've been intuitive eating for like successfully intuitive eating for years, like 5 years, and you know what changes you can make in your life to basically create that calorie deficit essentially. But for a majority of you, like the progression route will be going from tracking your calories to intuitive eating. That might start with not tracking on the weekends. It might start with, just tracking your protein each day, and then tracking your protein, like just your protein sources every other day, and then not tracking at all. That's, generally like the progression route that I would give my clients before they finish their program, in terms of like being able to monitor like their still being able to make sure that they're monitoring their protein intake, because that's usually the thing that slips the most, and that's usually the thing that has the biggest knock-on effect with them not being able to successfully intuitive eat because they're too hungry essentially. So yeah, I hope that has helped, and if anyone has any questions about intuitive eating, please just drop me a message.